Okay, so there has been a lot of exciting news about the future DC games that are being made. Now, first, the next Arkham game is supposedly under production from Rocksteady, who of course made the original Arkham games. Now, this is based on gossip in the industry and a leak, which personally I'm against. I do like knowing future plans of games, but hacking private information is just always wrong. I'm not trying to start anything here like a crusade, I just disagree with it. But even though I won't be going over the hack in detail, it is known that Rocksteady are working on a game, and it's likely a Bat game. Now, this has been corroborated with the fact that James Gunn has said that more Arkham games are being made, and we also know from job listings that Rocksteady are making a new game. And after Suicide Squad, they need a hit. And since Arkham games have sold over 32 million units worldwide and grossed an estimated $2.5 billion, well, that means that another Arkham game is pretty much a guaranteed hit for them. So it makes sense that they would make it, and the rumours in their industry are saying that it is definitely happening. Plus, we know that Arkham Shadow was also a hit. It's estimated that 1 million downloads of the VR game have been sold, which is actually quite a lot for a Quest exclusive VR game. So this clearly shows Warner Bros. That the market is ready for more Arkham projects, which is something both you and I already knew, as it's very, very obvious and we have been begging for this game for years, but now Warner Bros. Have hard proof that we will buy it. Also, Sony have been in talks to make this game a PlayStation exclusive, which would be good for Sony as they've made a fortune through Spider-Man games, and this would give them the biggest share of the superhero video game market. And since no one has been making Arkham or Injustice games in recent years, they basically want to take the IP and go and make some games, and of course, make another fortune. Again, like they have with Insomniac's Spider-Man series, which has reportedly sold over 50 million units worldwide and grossed over $3.8 billion worldwide. And this is because Sony understand that not every game has to be a first-person shooter. Sure, they make a lot of money, but if everyone's making them, well, it's an oversaturated market and you have to make a different type of game. And Sony realise that, just as they realise that a game should be based around a character and not a gaming format. Though it does seem unlikely that the Arkham game will be a PlayStation exclusive, as that would limit the sales. But maybe Sony will strike a deal for something else, or maybe the first year will be an exclusive and then it'll go to the other consoles. But in any case, we all know we'll still end up buying it. So basically, the fans want it, Warner Bros. Knows it will make them money, the studio who made the original game are available and working on a new game, one that they need to succeed or the studio could go under, and rumours and leaks are circulating that an Arkham game is being developed. So it makes perfect sense in every way that the next Arkham game is in production. Of course, it will still be years till we get it, AAA games take a long time to make after all. But I personally believe this game is being made. I know it's mainly rumour and conjecture, sure, but I really can't think of a single reason why they wouldn't be making it. Now, as for a release date, well, Arkham Knight is the biggest Arkham game made, which started developing in 2011 and was finished in 2015, meaning it took 4 years for them to make it. So even if Rocksteady have already started last year, they've still barely begun. Plus, new games tend to take longer than the older ones did, so it will be a minimum of 4 years. I'd say 2029 at the earliest, and more likely 2030. Although we may actually get an Arkham game before that, as there are rumours flying around that one, or more, of the Arkham games will be getting an update for the new consoles. Now, no one knows which one of them it is for certain, but the 10-year anniversary of Arkham Knight is here, so that may be the one getting the update. Although personally, I would prefer some new DLC being released, as I would much rather buy that than update a game that has perfectly fine graphics already. Now, a couple of final details before I move on to the Injustice game. For those of you who care, yes, Batman did die in the Suicide Squad game, but supposedly this wasn't the real Batman. It was an alternate universe version, and the Batman from the Arkham games is still very much alive. And in fairness to the developers of the game, they have said before that this was always the plan from the very beginning. They wanted to do it this way so that they could continue using the characters, but still have them killed off at the same time. But that's how they're making the new Arkham game work, assuming they even bother to reference it at all, and don't just decide to pretend Suicide Squad doesn't exist, which would seem like a much better option to me. But one of the biggest questions is, who is going to replace Kevin Conroy? He has of course sadly passed on, and so he can't be in the new Arkham game, unless of course they reuse already recorded audio or use an AI of his voice, which seems unlikely. Not impossible, but unlikely. I think it's much more likely that they'll just abandon using this version of Batman, in honour of him, and use a new Batman. Maybe killing off Kevin Conroy's character, or at least having him out of the game, with maybe a few lines of him explaining this. Like I said, they do have a lot of lines already recorded. Kevin Conroy was voicing this character for decades after all. And so they could use that to give him a more respectful ending than the one he had in Suicide Squad, which is something that I think all of us would really like. And maybe Dick Grayson or Damian Wayne could be the new Batman. At one point, Arkham Legacy was a studio plan. It could finally happen now, and we could have Dick Grayson as Batman with a Robin Damian Wayne. And I think that's the best way they could go with this story. It could be done in a God of War type style, with a main character and a sidekick who helps out in fights, possibly even playing as both Grayson and Damian. I mean, personally, I would love that, but what do you guys think? Please feel free to let us know in the comments, and now we'll move on to Injustice 3. Now, a lot of people think Injustice 3 isn't happening, which is fair. I'd actually given up on it a bit after all this time. I mean, it's been 8 years since Injustice 2 came out in 2017. Even taking into account the pandemic and how long games take to make, that is still quite a long time, so it only makes sense to think there would be no sequel. However, the reason for the delay was actually addressed by Ed Boon, who is of course the head of NetherRealm Studio. And it basically comes down to this. They did want to make Injustice 3, but they didn't have the manpower or resources to make both the next Mortal Kombat game and Injustice 3 as well. This was a result of switching to a new game engine for the games, and then being hit with COVID halfway through it, which ground the whole world to a halt. And so NetherRealm had to make a choice. Did they go with Mortal Kombat or Injustice? And naturally they chose Mortal Kombat, as it is the flagship of their company. I mean, hell, the company's called NetherRealm. It's literally named after a place in Mortal Kombat. And of course, Mortal Kombat is the best-selling fighting game of all time, with over 72 million units sold worldwide. However, NetherRealm have finally reached the point where they can make Injustice 3. Now, this still means it will be a few years, and yes, this is of course just rumours circulating the business, combined with the things that Ed Boon has said over the years, and of course the fact that NetherRealm are seeking new employees for jobs that sound like they are making another game, besides the Mortal Kombat games. But of course none of that is certain. It is of course just rumour, it is of course just things that Ed Boon has said, and those plans can be changed at any point for any reason. After all, a lot of games and projects get cut all the time for various reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with sales, but everything to do with stuff behind the scenes. Does the studio have the money or the manpower, and do they have the licensing for the characters, or has that licensing been sold to another company? These political things pop up all the time and ruin perfectly good projects. But considering that all the recent DC games, like Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad, have been pretty unsuccessful, it does make sense that DC would want to return to games that were very successful. Hence why they're revisiting the Arkhamverse and why they would want to go to the Injustice universe as well. Because the first Injustice game was the best-selling game the month it was released in 2013, and the second game sold 1.5 million copies in its first 3 months alone, back in 2017. But basically they both made a lot of money, and there's no reason not to make another one. So Warner Bros will definitely make one in the future, because this intellectual property is very profitable. After all, they have released a few mobile games here and there, little updates, and even included DC characters in Mortal Kombat, because it's clearly making money, and that's all they care about. So really, the only question is, how long till they make it, and whether NetherRealm are the developers. They obviously wanted them to be the ones to make it, they did start it, and they are very good at it. I mean, they're literally the best in the world, so it does make sense to wait until they have the time, which they apparently do have, and they definitely have the resources. We also have to include the fact that the Injustice game was turned into a film in 2021, which in part was released in order to test the market, and see if people are still interested in the Injustice universe. Now obviously we all know that people are, but Warner Bros. Needs to know if people are interested enough so that they will spend their hard-earned money on it. And since this film sold over 70,000 copies and made over $2 million, which isn't a fortune, sure, but if you compare it to recent DC animated sales, that's actually not bad, especially for a film that's a one-off knockoff video game adaptation. And more importantly, this film existing shows that Warner Bros. Are thinking of using the Injustice universe in future projects. That's why they've put it out there. It's the other reason for the film's release, to keep Injustice in fans' minds and make them talk online about whether they want a new Injustice game. Make no mistake, there are people who work at Warner Bros. Full time just reading things that people post on the internet and taking it down as market research. I know this because one of my closest friend's brother actually works there doing this. And honestly, this is the best sign that the new Injustice game is going to be made, because these people do take this to their superiors, it gets collated, and they say, yeah, people want this game. But believe it or not, that actually makes a big difference to executives. Now, admittedly, the animated film was released 4 years ago, sure, but that is nothing in terms of reading the market and making new games. It takes a long time to get stuff done. We all know that games and films these days take many, many years from start to finish, and DC projects are plagued with delays. Hence why the Wonder Woman game is still a long way off being done. Seriously, developers plan their game projects across decades, not years, decades, because that's how long it takes to make several projects. But basically, Warner Bros. And DC know that people want it and that they will spend their money on it, which means one way or another, they're going to make a sequel, and NetherRealm are finally in the position to make it. And that's the point of this. NetherRealm can finally actually make it, which is why it's going to be made soon. You see, Ed Boon actually said that the studio had a plan for a 7-year wait after MK11 was released for a new Injustice game to be made. Like I said, they plan across decades. Now, MK11 was released in 2019, meaning the Injustice 3 game was potentially set to be released in 2026. If everything went according to plan, that is, which it never does. So I'd add at least a year to this estimate, meaning 2027 would be the earliest that we would get an Injustice 3 game. Especially since these were soft plans from Ed Boon many years ago, so patience must be exercised. So now all we have to do is wait, and of course wonder what the story will be this time. Hopefully they'll be moving away from the Batman versus Superman motif. I mean, it worked at first, but now it would just be silly for Superman to attack yet again. Injustice 2 ended with him depowered and trapped in the Phantom Zone after all. And him escaping and coming back with powers just to try and conquer the planet again? Well, that would just be a bit dumb at this point. No, they either need to get a Superman from another universe, or better yet, scrap that plot entirely and go in a different direction altogether. There are plenty of DC bad guys to choose from, and they even have a Supergirl there as their token Kryptonian now, so Superman really isn't needed. And personally, I wouldn't mind a Batman vs Luthor theme, an evil Luthor from another universe, because Luthor vs Batman would be good. They're the same but kind of opposites, both genius billionaires who wear costumes, but one good, one bad. I mean, it would be interesting. Or if the story has to be yet another Civil War Justice League vs Justice League theme, then just go the route of the evil Justice League from another universe, coming to try and conquer the multiverse. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit obvious, but it works fine and it will be entertaining, and audiences are already familiar with it. So NetherRealm could take their version of it, gore it up with more adult violence to make it their own, and then sell it, as they're famous for doing. I mean, Mortal Kombat has not exactly got a PG rating, has it? But what story would you like to see them use? And what new characters do you want them to feature? Please feel free to let us know in the comments, and I'd just like to quickly remind everyone that we have some merchandise available on our store, and to say thanks to all of you who have donated to the Needle Mouse Productions page on Patreon. And as always, thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.